Andy Cohen just got schooled on national television by a woman with 2 Hall of Fame inductions, a Netflix CMO title, and 0 patience for nonsense.
Andy Cohen, come here. I'm calling you to the front of the class, okay? Did you really make this face?
And somehow, he's still not the one in the hot seat. Because what happened between Andy and Bozoma Saint John at the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, Season 15, reunion wasn't a one-off. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was the latest chapter in a pattern so long, it could fill a Bravo season of its own. And today, we're breaking the whole thing down, from the skeptical face heard around the internet, to how Andy treats Dorit like she's auditioning for her own show every single reunion, to why women across every franchise have been saying the same thing for years. Andy Cohen has a problem, and it's time we talked about it. Let's start with the moment that set the internet on fire. During part 2 of the RHOBH Season 15 reunion, the conversation turned to Bozoma Saint John's career. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, and clearly Andy was in this category, Boz has served as Chief Marketing Officer at some of the biggest companies on the planet. We're talking Netflix, Uber, Pepsi, Endeavor. This woman's resume doesn't just speak for itself, it gives a TED Talk. So when the topic of CMO tenures came up, what did our beloved reunion host do? He made a face. You know the face. The skeptical, furrowed brow, really though, face that says more than words ever could. Then he questioned whether the CMO role is actually meant to be short-term, implying Boz's career trajectory was somehow unusual. And here's where it gets worse. When viewers called him out on social media, Andy didn't pause and reflect. He doubled down on Threads, saying every CMO he'd known had longer tenures. Sir, with all due respect, your primary professional interaction is asking women in sequined gowns who they think is the fakest person in the room. The CMO landscape might not be your area of expertise, but Boz, because she is Boz, handled it like the executive she is. She posted a video on Instagram, looked directly into that camera and said the words every viewer at home was thinking, Andy Cohen, come here. I'm calling you to the front of the class. She didn't just defend herself, she dropped actual data. Only about 1% of Fortune 500 CMO roles are held by black women. That's 3 to 4 people out of roughly 346 positions. She's personally acquainted with the others. She also pointed out that over 300,000 black women have been pushed out of the corporate workforce, not by choice, despite leading every other demographic in educational achievement. Then, because she has range, she closed by lip-syncing Lil Wayne. I'm the best to ever do it. Andy's response, 4 words on Threads. I was unaware, I am now. Cool, Andy. But here's the thing. Being unaware is a pattern with you, and that's what we need to talk about. Now let's shift to another woman Andy seems to have complicated feelings about, Dorit Kemsley. If you watched the Season 15 reunion, you noticed something. Andy's energy with Dorit was pointed, and this isn't new. Let's rewind to the Season 14 reunion, where Andy literally read a viewer tweet asking why the season felt like Dorit was trying to keep her job. Then he turned to Kyle Richards, Dorit's frenemy, and asked her to co-sign. Kyle, do you think Dorit was coming in hot to stay on the show? Kyle agreed, and Andy just let that narrative breathe. Now think about that for a second. The reunion host, the man who is supposed to be the neutral moderator, used his platform to essentially question whether a cast member deserved her spot on the show. When has he ever done that to Kyle? To Erica? The answer is never, because certain housewives get the benefit of Andy's doubt, and Dorit is not one of them. Fast forward to this season's reunion. Dorit is going through a real divorce. Her house was in pre-foreclosure, because PK wasn't paying the mortgage without telling her. She's rebuilding her entire life on camera. And instead of Andy creating space for that vulnerability, what does he do? He asks Dorit questions about Kyle's relationship. Not questions for Kyle, questions about Kyle, directed at Dorit. When Dorit rightfully snapped back with, ask her, she's right to your right, viewers across the internet were cheering. One recap literally wrote that Andy seemed scared to ask Kyle directly. And it goes further. Andy accused Dorit of weaponizing Sutton's home address during a reunion argument. He called her out for poking Sutton. He suggested she should apologize when she pushed back on Erica. Every time Dorit shows any fire, Andy frames it as a problem. But when Kyle asks Andy to shut her up, literally those words, Andy just shrugs and says he can't. The subtext is clear. Certain women get to be feisty, and certain women get to be too much. And if you're keeping score, the women who get labelled too much are often the ones Andy doesn't personally socialise with off-camera. And this brings us to the incident that should have been the wake-up call. Garcelle Beauvais, Season 12. For those who need a refresher, Lisa Rinna threw Garcelle's memoir in the trash. Erica Jane posted a photo of it on Instagram. Rinna admitted during the reunion that she'd filmed herself doing it and shared the video in a group chat that Garcelle wasn't part of. The cast was literally snickering about a black woman's life story in a private chat. So when this came up at the reunion, what did Andy, the journalist, the moderator, the man in the big chair, do? He asked Rinna if she recycles. He made a joke. He turned one of the most painful moments of Garcelle's professional life into a punchline, and then moved on before Garcelle could even process what happened. The camera caught her holding back tears while Andy, Erica and Rinna laughed. The backlash was immediate and massive. Fans flooded social media, calling out what they saw as racial bias and microaggressions. Reddit threads compared the treatment to what BIPOC employees experience in corporate settings. The dismissal, the gaslighting, the way your pain becomes everyone else's comedy. Andy eventually apologised on his SiriusXM show, saying he should have been more in tune with Garcelle's feelings and admitting he was wrong to divert from the serious conversation. But here's the thing about apologies that only come after public pressure. They tell you the person didn't see a problem until it cost them something. And fans didn't forget. People invoked NeNe Leakes, who had previously accused Andy and Bravo of creating a hostile environment for black women. NeNe had filed a lawsuit alleging racism, a suit that was eventually settled. But the core accusation lingered. Andy treats certain women differently, and race is part of the equation. Now listen, if you're watching this and nodding along, you're not alone. If this video is hitting different, do me a favour, smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and drop a comment telling me which Andy Cohen moment made you the maddest, because I know you have one. This community keeps growing because you'll keep showing up, and I appreciate every single one of you. Now let's get back into it, because we're not done. Now, if this was just about mean faces and awkward jokes at reunions, maybe you could write it off as bad hosting. But when the courtrooms start getting involved, that's when you know it's not just a vibe, it's a pattern with paperwork. Let's start with the OG herself, NeNe. In April 2022, NeNe filed a federal lawsuit against Andy Cohen, Bravo, NBC Universal, and the production companies behind RHOBH. The suit alleged that for years the network fostered a corporate and workplace culture that permitted and tolerated, if not encouraged, racially offensive and insensitive conduct. NeNe specifically cited incidents involving her co-star Kim Zolciak-Biermann, who allegedly used the N-word in reference to her fellow housewives and called NeNe's home a roach nest. And when NeNe reported it, the executives didn't terminate their relationship with Zolciak-Biermann or take any meaningful action. In fact, Kim eventually got her own spin-off show. Meanwhile, NeNe claimed she was effectively forced off the show she built. The case was dismissed in August 2022 after both sides filed a joint motion, and reports suggested NeNe received a settlement, reportedly around $4.5 million, along with a non-disclosure agreement. So she got paid to be quiet. Make of that what you will. Then there's Leah McSweeney, and this one is still very much alive. In February 2024, the former RHONY star sued Andy Cohen, Bravo, and multiple production companies, alleging years of disability discrimination, a hostile work environment, and retaliation tied to her alcohol use disorder. Leah claims that producers knew about her sobriety struggles, but repeatedly pressured her to drink on camera, discouraged her from staying sober, and weaponized her relapse into a central storyline for ratings. She also accused Andy directly of using drugs with certain housewives and rewarding the ones who participated with more favourable treatment and edits. Andy denied everything and called the allegations false. But a federal judge didn't throw it all out. 3 major claims: disability discrimination, hostile work environment, and failure to provide reasonable accommodations are proceeding to trial. And here's the kicker. When Bravo tried to move the case into private arbitration, essentially take it behind closed doors, the judge said no, ruling that the defendants had waived that right and couldn't have their cake and eat it too. So this is playing out in federal court, in public, for everyone to see. Leah also filed amended claims in November 2025, alleging that Andy orchestrated a coordinated attack using other Bravo stars to publicly discredit her, naming 24 current and former housewives, who she says were directed or induced to publicly disparage her character. And we haven't even gotten to Caroline Manzo. In January 2024, the former RHONJ star filed a lawsuit against Bravo, alleging that producers created an unsafe working environment that led to sexual assault on the set of Real Housewives' Ultimate Girls Trip. The suit claims that Bravo and its affiliates regularly gave cast members excessive amounts of alcohol, then directed, encouraged, or allowed them to sexually harass other cast members, because it was good for ratings. And notably, Caroline didn't sue her co-star, she sued the network. Because in her view, the system is the problem. So let's zoom out for a second. You've got a racial discrimination lawsuit that ended in a reported multi-million-dollar settlement. You've got a disability discrimination case heading to federal trial. You've got a sexual assault lawsuit alleging the network created the conditions for harm. And at the centre of all of it, directly named in multiple lawsuits, is the man who sits in that chair at every reunion and asks everyone else to be accountable. The irony is so thick, you could frost a cake with it. Here's what ties it all together. Andy Cohen has favourites, and he's not even subtle about it anymore. Kyle Richards was the first housewife to meet Andy's son, Benjamin. Think about that. Out of every woman across every franchise, Kyle got that honour. And on camera, Andy consistently gives Kyle softer questions, gentler follow-ups, and the kind of editorial protection that other housewives can only dream about. When Carol Radziwill had her falling out with Bethany Frankel on RHONY, fans noticed Andy seemed firmly in Bethany's corner during the reunion. Carol confronted him about it directly. The result? Carol was gone the next season. When Denise Richards was being dragged through the mud during RHOBH Season 10 over rumours spread by Brandi Glanville, a person who wasn't even a full-time cast member, Andy let the pile-on happen. Fans said he rarely gave Denise space to defend herself while Lisa Rinna dominated the conversation. When Monique Samuels had her altercation with Candiac Dillard on RHOP, Andy questioned why Monique wasn't showing enough emotion at the reunion. He called her matter-of-fact and dry. Fans pointed out that a black woman was being told her emotional response wasn't the right kind of emotional response, by a man who profits from the conflicts he's supposedly mediating. The pattern isn't complicated. If Andy likes you personally, you get grace. If he doesn't, you get grilled. And if you're a woman of colour who pushes back, you get a combination of both. Scrutiny dressed up as curiosity. Multiple housewives across multiple franchises have independently arrived at the same conclusion. NeNe said it. Garcelle's experience showed it. Boz just proved it again. At a certain point, when everyone in the room keeps telling you the air feels different for them, maybe the problem isn't the room, maybe it's the thermostat, and Andy's been controlling it. And here's why this conversation goes beyond reality TV. What Boz did with her video, calling out the skepticism, presenting the data, centering the broader issue of black women being forced out of the workforce, that's what accountability looks like. She took a microaggression and turned it into a masterclass. Because here's the thing, Andy's skeptical face isn't just Andy's face. It's the face every ambitious woman has seen across a conference table. It's the raised eyebrow when you list your qualifications. It's the subtle implication that your success must have an asterisk next to it. The only difference is that this time it happened on camera, and 2 million people saw it. Dorit deals with a version of it too. The constant suggestion that she's performing, that she's too loud, too much, trying too hard. Meanwhile, other cast members exhibit the exact same behaviour, and it gets reframed as iconic or classic housewives energy. The reunions are supposed to be a reckoning, a place where the truth comes out. But when the host himself has a thumb on the scale, the reckoning only goes in one direction. And the women who need advocacy the most end up performing emotional labour just to be heard by the person who's supposed to be listening. So Andy says he was unaware, fine, but awareness without change is just performance. And right now, every woman who's ever sat across from that man at a reunion is watching to see what he does next. Because Boz didn't just call Andy to the front of the class, she put him on notice. And the next reunion, part 3, is still coming. The question isn't whether Andy learned his lesson. The question is whether Bravo is finally ready to ask itself, does the person hosting the conversation actually respect the women having it? Because right now,